Thank you for inviting me and giving me this really unenviable task of coming at the very end of this very informative presentations and trying to kind of discuss them in a coherent manner, which I'm afraid I won't be able to probably go through at great length. But I will try to rather present here a couple of comments on the general idea behind the research, which I find timely and important. I mean, to answer one of the questions in chat, and why are you presenting research if we haven't found any Muslim Brotherhood activity? Well, I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, it's not the point to prove that there is. I mean, the point is to research if there is any, and if there's no, we'll say that it's not there. Also, I would like to thank Andrea for really well-rounded and balanced report. It's not very easy task, given the differences between the context and also the overall idea that the Muslim Brotherhood somehow plays a rather central role in the political and religious lives of communities in the region, which is very, very often present in many of the discussions of the region, which I myself find rather strange, given the experience that the whole Muslim Brotherhood discussion is based on the discussion of the communities, which in very essence differ very much from the Muslim communities in the Western Balkans. Namely, when we are talking about Muslim Brotherhood activities, we are clearly basing or founding our discussion of them, as was presented in the earlier discussions by Dr. Lorenzo and Victor, on the experiences of the European Muslim communities, which are unlike the Western Balkan communities, immigrant communities. I mean, there haven't been Muslims in the Western world when Muslim Brotherhood was founded, and as it was mentioned in the report, I mean, there was autochthon Muslim presence in Bosnia in the 1930s, which could, probably relate to the experience of the Muslim Brotherhood in Arab countries. Also, it is very important to note that Muslim communities in the Western Balkans in general have shown and demonstrated considerable resiliency to the radicalization of their communities in the past, let's say, 25 years. We're mostly focusing on the region since the collapse of communism and liberalization of the region and then social discourse, including the discourse related to the role of religion in these societies. Even though very often the experiences, our experience with the academic research of the role of political Islam in the region focuses on, as it was mentioned, Bosnia as a cradle of terrorism in Europe or whatsoever, there's precious little evidence that is there to substantiate these claims. And the Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I will speak about the Bosnia and Herzegovina in particular, has really demonstrated its firm commitment to the overall very democratic, very open, transparent, and inclusive discussion related to the role of Islam in society, and what has prevailed from this public discussion is the firm commitment to continue with the cultivation of what is colloquially known here as the Bosnian Islam or traditional Hanafi interpretation of Islam, which sees Islam as belonging to the realm of the private and not really suitable to play the role in the public and especially political discourse in a mixed society where Muslims always been a relative minority. Another very important factor to consider when talking about the role of Muslim Brotherhood and its relation to the Muslim communities and Islam in general in the Western Balkans is the fact that the whole Muslim Brotherhood ideology, the whole philosophy behind it, is firmly based on the anti-colonial experience. It was born out of opposition to the Western involvement and control of the elites in the Arab world. Basically, this opposition has, styled Muslim Brotherhood as the kind of voice of Muslims against the Western oppression. And this is another reason why Muslim Brotherhood had at times played such an important role in informing the worldview of the immigrant Muslim communities in the West that have found themselves on the fringes of society or the margins, being excluded, suffering from social exclusion or whatsoever, at times being radicalized. And Muslim Brotherhood ideology proved as very useful in forming their worldview at times, because this is precisely the philosophy that Muslim Brotherhood has incorporated by viewing the entire Arab world at the turn of the century and early 20th century as being captured by the West. This is the reason why Muslim Brotherhood could possibly inspire some Muslim intellectuals in the interwar period in the 1930s, as it was mentioned. Very few people actually at that time studied and traveled to the Arab world, but those few that did were probably inspired by the narrative, which could play or inform the discussion of the role of the Muslim communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina and other countries in the Balkans that at that time were considered to be rather inferior, and the state of Yugoslavia, or Kingdom of Yugoslavia at that time, and later socialist Yugoslavia, was seen as being captured by the other national elites, and religion, especially in socialist Yugoslavia and especially Islam, being pushed to the farthest margins of society and not given the role or any prominence in the political life of Yugoslavia. Then we could understand that this particular anti-colonial ideology embraced by the Muslim Brotherhood could inspire some of the Muslim activists or intellectuals writing about the problems faced by the Muslim communities in Kingdom of Yugoslavia and socialist Yugoslavia. However, since the focus of the report is on the period, obviously, recent period or period since the 1990s and liberalization of these countries, it is very important to understand that the ideology of Muslim Brotherhood would be extremely ill-suited to inform the worldview of the Muslim communities in the region, in the Western Balkans, in Bosnia and other countries in particular, since the anti-colonial, in essence, anti-colonial mentality, which blames the West for all the ills faced by the Muslim society, simply doesn't have any grounding in the experiences of the Muslim communities in the region. I mean, all of them in North Macedonia, in Kosovo, in Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina have enjoyed the freedom of religion, have been able to develop their social discourse, and students abroad inform their worldview by reference to many political and ideological programs, out of all of which Muslim Brotherhood will probably be the most ill-suited to contribute to contribute to understanding the social position of the Muslim communities in the region. If there are any concerns, I'm aware of very limited time, so I'll probably go through the conclusions. If there are any concerns related to the radicalization of the Islamic communities or Muslims in the region, they should probably be looked at in a different way and framed within the scope of the experiences that had been present and identified in the region since the 1990s. First and foremost, I'm talking about the Salafi threat and ideology, which was aggressively, we shouldn't forget this, aggressively promoted by Saudi Arabia and some Gulf countries in the region, and especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, given the fact that Bosnia went through a horrible war and Muslim communities suffered exceptionally, and it was seen at the time in the 1990s as prone to this kind of ideology, since it came with the considerable funding from Saudi Arabia, building the mosques and whatsoever, and eventually resulting in already mentioned a number of dozens of foreign fighters venturing to fight the wars in Syria, probably also in the region, all of them, virtually all of them, being inspired by this Salafi, Puritanist, Wahhabi understanding of Islam and its role in society. Salafi ideology has also recently rather kind of ebbed away. The influence has ebbed away with the changes in Saudi Arabia, but also in terms of, in particular in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the proponents of this ideology having very little to show for all the considerable resources that were invested. I mean, if all this investment, probably measuring in tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, resulted in, let's say, a few scores of foreign fighters going to Syria, that's really not a lot. I mean, and total, let's say, hardline Salafi community measuring a number of 2,000s compared to a total of 2 million Muslims living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's really little to show for that. Another reason that I identify very often when we discuss these issues that might lead to radicalization of Muslim community in the region, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, has nothing to do with religion or aggressive campaign by any Islamist groups from around the world, but that's simply the feeling of being treated unfairly by the European Union, being excluded, pushed to the margins, being always out there, not being allowed into the EU, being, not able to travel until 2009 freely to the European Union. Now, Bosnia and Kosovo, the only two countries that haven't established any kind of status within the frame of the European Union enlargement, so on and so forth. That's a considerable threat down the line. And finally, also very important issue, if you are going to discuss the possibility and the capacity for influencing, radical influencing of the Muslims in the region, is the political Islam in the widest sense of the world, emptied of its spiritual content, which we see very often in a number of countries across the Middle East, from Turkey, elsewhere. Islam is taken as a political ideology and is being pushed to further nationalist goals, and is completely emptied of any spiritual influence, which would mediate its political impact. That's a threat, given the position of Bosnia and Herzegovina, given its contested identity still, and given the lack of prospect in the European Union integrations in the region. I'll try to stop there. Sorry for going through my time.